A wealthy man sat alone on a park bench, his tailored suit wrinkled from a sleepless night, his eyes red. Not from exhaustion, but from grief, he no longer had the strength to hide. In front of him stood a girl no older than 7, barefoot, wearing a sun-faded hoodie 2 sizes too big. She held out a single crushed dandelion with a timid smile, as if the act might fix whatever was broken inside him. He blinked through tears, stunned. She had nothing. Yet here she was, offering everything. What neither of them knew, what would shatter everything they believed about themselves, was this. She was his daughter, and he was the man who had abandoned her mother long before he ever knew a child had been born. And now, fate had brought them face to face. The wind in the city never cared who it touched. It slipped between the cracks of tall glass towers and traced its way through broken gutters with equal indifference. It kissed polished car doors and empty paper cups the same. For most, it was just another breeze, forgettable, unnoticed. But for Layla, the wind had a presence. It was what she felt most when hunger began whispering louder than the silence in her stomach. Her shoes did not fit. They never had. The soles were torn at the edges, flapping slightly with each step like worn-out wings trying to take flight. She was 7, but the way she walked made people pause, then look away. Not out of rudeness, out of guilt, because she moved like someone who had lived many lifetimes in a single childhood. Layla's hoodie had once been pink. Now it held the color of forgotten things, dust, rust, and the gray of rain-stained bricks. The fabric swallowed her tiny frame, sleeves too long, shoulders drooping not from fatigue, but from carrying weight that no child should know, the weight of absence. Absence of shelter, of warmth, of someone calling her name like it mattered. She wandered through the park with purpose, but no direction. Her little fingers curled into her sleeves both for warmth and comfort. She scanned the ground for crumbs, coins, anything someone else no longer needed. A crust of bread half buried in gravel once fed her for 2 days. A tossed apple bruised beyond recognition had still tasted sweet. The sun had been kinder this morning, not hot, just there. It peeked through the clouds with a sort of hesitation, as if unsure whether the world deserved its warmth. Layla moved under its soft light, not looking up, not looking down, just moving, because standing still made the hunger louder. She had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. It had been a sandwich someone left on a bench, half-bitten. She did not care. Hunger taught you to stop judging gifts. But today, the ache in her stomach was different, sharper. It made her dizzy, turned the world slightly crooked. Still, her legs moved. She had learned not to listen to pain. It only slowed you down. In her small hand, she carried a flower. Not much of one. A dandelion, its petals beginning to curl inward, its stem already half bent. It had caught her eye near the entrance of the park, surviving in a crack of concrete, as if nature had refused to be erased. She had picked it with care, pressing it between her fingers like a treasure. It was warm, not in temperature, but in memory. It reminded her of something, someone, her mother. Layla did not remember her mother's face entirely, just flashes, a soft laugh, fingers that stroked her forehead, a smell, something like jasmine and mint, the way she used to hum when brushing Layla's hair. Her mother had never shouted. Even when things were bad, her voice had been gentle. That was how Layla knew something was wrong the day she stopped singing. That was also the day Layla stopped being a child. The shelter had closed a month ago. Lack of funding, the woman at the front desk had said, eyes apologizing while her voice explained policies. We're doing what we can. But they weren't. And Layla had learned quickly that promises meant less when there were too many people and too few beds. Since then, the streets had become her map, and silence her closest friend. She knew which alleys stayed dry when it rained, which food trucks sometimes left scraps, which security guards would look the other way if she slept under the stairs. She was not afraid. Not anymore. Hunger was louder than fear. Then she saw him. He sat on a rusted green bench with peeling paint, surrounded by pigeons that paid him no mind. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit that looked out of place here. Too clean, too expensive. His hands were clasped together between his knees, head bowed so low his chin nearly touched his chest. The soles of his black leather shoes were dusty. His tie hung slightly crooked. Layla paused. Wealthy men rarely came here. When they did, they walked fast, talking loudly on their phones, making sure the park knew they did not belong. This man was different. He looked like he had been crying. His eyes were red. His posture collapsed in
Ward. She had seen that posture before, in a woman sitting outside the pharmacy who had just lost her child. Layla stepped closer, unsure why. She felt something. A pull. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the fact that he looked more lost than she felt. She stood a few feet away, staring. And then, slowly, she raised the dandelion. He did not see her at first. His mind was far, tucked into memories and regrets, buried beneath a letter he still could not read. But something made him look up, a shift in air, a presence. And when he did, his tired eyes met hers. Layla extended the flower with both hands. "This is for you," she said, voice quiet but steady. The man stared. There was no smile on her face. Just calm. Just offering. It had been years since someone gave him something without needing anything in return. Not a handshake. Not a favor. Not a transaction. Just a flower. He reached for it like it was made of glass. His fingers trembled slightly as he took it. "Thank you," he whispered, voice rough from silence, from grief, from being too proud for too long. Layla nodded once. Then, without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked away. That was how she did things. Give. Leave. She never expected anything back. It had never worked like that. The man stayed frozen on the bench. His hand still held the flower, and something inside him, something buried, shifted. Cracked. This morning, he had left the courtroom where his name had been stripped off the door. The company he built from scratch had turned its back on him. Shareholders wanted fresh leadership. The kind that did not come with scandals or public divorce filings. And that same morning, his wife had filed papers, no more waiting, no more therapy. Just finality. But the pain that brought him to the park bench had nothing to do with business or failed love. Last night, he had dreamed of her. The woman he had left behind over a decade ago. The woman who had carried their child, without ever telling him. He had never asked. He had told himself it was better that way. Now, staring at a flower given by a child in a sun-faded hoodie, he felt something shift in the air. In her eyes, he had seen a familiar light. Not recognition. Something deeper. Something that asked quietly, "Why do you look like you belong to my past?" And as she disappeared into the trees, he stood. His feet moved before he knew why. The flower still in his hand. His heart pounding, not from sadness, but from the echo of something he had long buried trying to rise again. He did not know who she was. But something in him needed to. The man with the shattered watch. He did not know why his feet moved, only that they refused to remain still. The flower trembled between his fingers as he rose from the bench, his gaze scanning the trees that had swallowed her small frame. The city buzzed somewhere behind him, cars honking, people chattering, but it all felt muffled, distant, like the world was happening behind a sheet of glass. Only the path ahead, where the little girl had disappeared, felt real. His name was Adam Hale. 43. Once known as the man with the golden instinct on Wall Street. A titan in tailored suits, a strategist who could read people like open books, who turned collapsing companies into rising empires. But no one had taught him how to read silence. No one had warned him that when regret comes, it does not knock, it barges in and takes everything. He followed slowly, careful not to startle her. But she was already gone. He stood still, surrounded by the rustling of trees. His hand clenched the dandelion now, gently, like it held answers. It was absurd, really. A flower from a child. But something had shifted in him the moment their eyes met. There was a question in her stare. Not the kind that demands an answer, but the kind that makes you afraid of finding one. He lowered his gaze to the sidewalk. That was when he noticed it. A small button. Pink, plastic, scratched at the edges. Still warm from her pocket. She had dropped it, maybe unknowingly, maybe fatefully. He picked it up and held it in his palm. It reminded him of something. A tiny sweater. Mint green. With 3 mismatched buttons. He blinked hard, and the image vanished. Memories were cruel that way, surfacing without permission, dragging emotions behind them like anchors. The button sat in his hand, and he realized it was not the flower that had broken him. It was the feeling that he had seen that face before. He slipped the button into his pocket and walked back toward the bench, unsure of what he was looking for, but knowing he could not leave. As he sat again, his wrist brushed against something sharp. He looked down. His watch was cracked. He had not noticed. Probably when he dropped his briefcase earlier, in the alley near the courthouse, after that damned vote. The glass was shattered across the dial, but the second hand still ticked, barely. Time refusing to stop, even as everything else in his life did. He stared at the crack. It was poetic, in a way. He had built his empire obsessed with time. Schedules. Deadlines. Presentations. Clocks. Every second accounted for, every minute monetized. But now, as the wind passed again, colder this time, he realized how little those minutes had meant when measured against what he had lost. He closed his eyes, leaned back, and let the ache rise. It pressed against his chest like a hand. A child. A daughter. He had never known for certain. Only rumors. A voicemail long ago from a mutual friend, "You should call her. She's not well. And there's something you need to know." He had deleted it. Back then, he had told himself he had no room for maybes. He was building something that would last. And yet, now, all that he had built was slipping through his fingers like sand. The silence around him deepened, and his thoughts wandered to her, Maya. She had been the only woman who saw him before the world did. The first to call him out when he faked confidence. She made fun of how he checked his watch every 5 minutes. "You act like it owes you something," she used to say. Maya had known what mattered. He had known it too, once. But time stole things, didn't it? Not all at once, just pieces. Like a sweater unraveling thread by thread, until you could not remember what it looked like before it came undone. Adam sat there for what felt like hours. Then he stood again. He had to find her. Not because he was sure. But because if he left, and if later someone confirmed what he feared, that he had looked his own daughter in the eye and walked away, he would never forgive himself. Not again. He stepped off the sidewalk, crossed toward the path behind the playground where she had gone, retracing her invisible footprints. The park curved there, dipping behind trees and stone fences. A spot the city forgot to renovate. Children rarely played there. It was quieter, rougher, with paint-chipped benches and weeds growing between the bricks. He paused at the old fountain. Dry. Cracked. A coin stuck between 2 stones. Someone had tried to wish for something once. He called out. Not loud, not demanding. Just a name, though he did not know what name to use. "Hey, girl," he said, awkwardly. "Are you still here?" Nothing. He tried again. "I wanted to thank you. Properly. You reminded me of someone." Still nothing. The park stared back. Adam exhaled. What was he doing? This was insane. Even if, what would he say? "Hi, I was in love with your mother once, then left her without ever checking if you were born." That was not a sentence. That was an apology written too late. He turned to leave. And then he heard it. A soft cough. Behind the bushes, just past the fence, a girl sat crouched beneath a piece of tarp, hugging her knees. Her flower was gone. Her hair was tangled from the wind. Her face tilted slightly as she looked at him, not scared, not surprised. Just tired. I dropped my button, she said. Adam reached into his pocket and held it out. She took it gently, nodded. Then silence again. He wanted to ask so many things. But how do you ask a child about the past she should not have to explain? Do you come here often? He asked, then immediately regretted how ridiculous that sounded. She shrugged. Sometimes, she said. When the other places are too loud. Her words cut through him. Not because they were sad, but because they were normal. As if that was just her life now. Noise and hiding. Tarps and parks. What's your name? He asked, kneeling slightly to her level. Layla. He nodded, as if that meant something. It did not. Not yet. But it would. Layla, do you have anyone? She looked away. I used to. She got sick. Then she left. Adam's mouth went dry. The wind picked up again, and the flower he still carried bent slightly in his hand. Layla's eyes met his, curious now. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. He swallowed. I don't know. But he did. Something in her eyes. The exact shape of Maya's brow. The way her mouth curled slightly when she was unsure. A feeling came over him. Heavy. Cold. Real. He did not ask if Maya was her mother. He already knew. A button from the past. The silence between them stretched like a fragile thread, one neither dared to pull for fear it might snap. Adam stood frozen, the crumpled dandelion still clutched in one hand, while Layla turned the button over in her palm with quiet reverence, as if it were something sacred. She did not ask who he was. She did not need to. Kids who had lived in the cracks of the world learned early that names were luxuries. Faces changed. People came and went. But pain stayed. Still, there was something different about him. Something in his eyes. People looked past her all the time, some with pity, some with judgment. But he was looking through her, like she was a page he had read before and forgotten, now trying to remember the words. You all right? Layla asked, not because she cared, she did not have room for that, but because the man looked like he was about to fall apart, and she was standing too close. He gave a faint nod, barely perceptible, and crouched to meet her at eye level. That button, he said quietly, where did you get it? She looked down at it, then shrugged. From my jacket. It's old. Been sewn on twice. His voice cracked. Did your mother give you that jacket? Layla narrowed her eyes. Why are you asking about my mom? A pause. Too long. I think. I may have known her. A long time ago. Layla tilted her head. What was her name then? Maya. And just like that, the air changed. It was not magic. It was not fate playing tricks. It was the way her shoulders tensed, the way her fingers wrapped tighter around the button. She did not nod. She did not speak. But that stillness, that single beat of breath held too long, was enough. Adam felt the ground shift beneath him. He sat down slowly on the curb, suddenly too heavy to stand. Layla stayed where she was, guarded, watching him like a stray cat who had seen too many traps. She died, Layla said flatly. No tremble. No drama. Just fact. Last winter. Got sick. Couldn't afford help. Adam's throat closed. He nodded slowly, but words betrayed him. He had left Maya behind so many years ago, chasing deals, chasing status, chasing time, and told himself it was for the best. They were young. She would move on. He would make something of himself. Then he had convinced himself that if there was a child, she would be better off without a ghost for a father. But now the ghost was sitting on a curb in front of her, and she was real. Real, and small, and tired in the way only someone who had lost too much too soon could be. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Layla looked away. "Everyone says that." "No. I mean, I think I'm your..." She cut him off. "Don't." Her voice was sharper now, trembling slightly. "Don't say things unless you know. I've had too many people promise things and disappear." Adam felt the sting in her words like glass under skin. She was not just hurt, she was defending what little was left of her. She did not need more questions. She needed answers. And he had none. Only 1,000 regrets. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a small, worn photograph he kept buried behind credit cards and old receipts. A picture of Maya, taken the night they had danced on the roof of her apartment after he landed his first investor. Her eyes were bright. The city lights behind her blurred like fireflies. "She looked like this, right?" he asked gently, offering the photo. Layla took it slowly. Her fingers brushed the edges. Her face did not move, but something inside her did. You could tell by how long she stared. "That's her," she said softly. She looked happy there. Adam nodded, pain tightening across his chest. She was. That night, she said she believed in me more than I believed in myself. She always said stuff like that, Layla murmured, eyes still on the photo. Even when we had nothing. Silence returned, but this time, it was not awkward. It was thick with emotion, the kind that wraps around two people who share grief from opposite sides of the same story. Adam's voice lowered to a whisper. "Why didn't she ever tell me?" Layla's laugh was dry. "She said you were busy building your world." She didn't want to interrupt. The words gutted him. She was right. He had been too busy. And now, with nothing left but a broken company, a signed divorce, and a cracked watch, he had stumbled upon the one thing he never knew he needed, a daughter who had survived without him, and yet, somehow, still had enough heart to give him a flower. He looked up at her. "Can I do something for you?" Layla hesitated. Then said, "You can give me your sandwich, if you have one." He laughed, a real one this time, hoarse and warm. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a wrapped sandwich he had grabbed this morning but never eaten. She took it and unwrapped it carefully, like it might disappear if opened too fast. Then she bit into it, not like she was starving, but like she was reclaiming something. Something small, inhuman, in hers. He watched her chew. She did not thank him. She did not need to. She had earned every bite. They sat there, on the cold curb, a former CEO and a street-hardened child, neither fully sure what came next. "I'm not asking for anything," she said, breaking the silence. "I know. I don't even know if you really are who you think. I know. But I don't want to sleep behind a truck again tonight." Adam turned to her. "You won't." And this time, she believed him. Not because of his suit. Not because of the watch. Because he had come back. Because he had stayed. And sometimes, staying is the loudest promise a person can make. Fractured bonds. The city around them seemed indifferent to their fragile connection. Somewhere far beyond the park, life rushed on, cars weaving through traffic, voices rising and falling like waves, and neon lights flickering on as evening crept closer. But here, beneath the fading daylight, two strangers sat on a worn stone bench, tethered by a thread spun from shared loss and silent questions. Adam looked at Layla, her small hands cradling the empty sandwich wrapper now, and wondered how so much strength could fit into such a fragile frame. 7 years old, and yet she moved with the weight of someone who had already seen too much. Her eyes, deep and unguarded now, held stories he was only beginning to understand. "How did you manage all this?" Adam asked quietly, voice almost breaking the stillness. Layla shrugged, staring down at the cracks in the pavement. "I guess I just learned to stop hoping for things to get better." It makes the waiting easier. He felt the sting of her words. Hope was something he had been told to hold on to in boardrooms and meetings, but in her world, hope was a luxury. It was something to let go, to protect yourself from disappointment. He had been taught to fight for hope, she had learned to survive without it. "You're very brave," Adam said. "I am sorry you had to be." Her face tightened for a moment, then softened. "Brave means you keep going, even when you don't want to." "Sometimes I don't want to, but I have to." Her honesty cut through him, sharper than any business failure, any betrayal. Because here was a child who had no safety net, no second chances handed to her on silver platters. Only the cold streets, the bitter wind, and a small flower to remind her there was still something worth holding on to. Adam realized he was holding his breath. "What about school?" he asked, desperate to find some normalcy in this fractured story. Layla's eyes flickered with a brief light, almost a smile. "Sometimes I go. But then I get too tired, or I don't have the right clothes, or the other kids don't want me there." She looked away, voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes the teachers don't either." Adam's heart tightened with guilt. He thought of his own childhood, attending the best schools, never worrying about lunch or shelter. Here was a child forced to choose between hunger and learning, between survival and belonging. "I promise you, I will help," he said with quiet determination. "No one should be left out because of things they cannot control." She looked back, meeting his gaze with a mix of suspicion and hope. "Why would you care?" His silence spoke louder than words. "How do you explain a father's absence, the years lost to ambition and pride? How do you tell a child that the man who left is suddenly the man who wants to stay?" "I want to know everything about you," Adam said softly. "Not just your story, but your dreams too." Layla looked at him then, really looked. For the first time, her eyes were not guarded, not distant, but curious. "I dream about a place where I don't have to hide," she said after a pause. "Where I can sleep without fear. Where I can be a kid and not have to worry about broken things." Adam nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "I want to build that place for you." She shifted on the bench, drawing her knees close. "You can't fix everything." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I can try." The words felt heavy between them, weighted with promises that neither fully understood yet. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out the cracked watch. The one he had ignored all day, until now. "This belonged to me," he said. "It's broken, like a lot of things." Layla reached out tentatively, brushing her fingers over the shattered glass. "It's still ticking." "Just barely." They sat together in silence, the ticking a soft reminder that time moved forward, relentless and unforgiving, yet offering small moments to heal. Suddenly, a sharp noise shattered the quiet. A group of teenagers rushed past, laughing loudly, tossing empty bottles carelessly. Layla flinched. Adam looked at her sharply. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly. "It's nothing." But Adam saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, the kind that whispered of nights spent dodging trouble, of dangers lurking in shadows. He clenched his fists. This world was harsh, but he would do everything to protect her from it. He stood and offered her his hand. "Come with me. Let's get you somewhere safe." Layla hesitated. Trust was a fragile thing. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, not as a charity case, not as a burden, but as his daughter, made her reach out. Together, they walked away from the park, leaving behind the echoes of the city's indifference. As they moved through the streets, Adam thought about what it would take to mend the broken pieces of a family torn apart by time and silence. He had built empires, faced rivals, weathered storms of corporate betrayal. But this was the greatest challenge of all. Because some wounds were invisible, carried deep inside where no balance sheet could measure loss. And some promises were harder to keep than any contract signed under bright boardroom lights. But he would try. For Layla. For the little girl who had given him a dandelion when all he had was emptiness. For the chance to be a father he never was. The city breathed around them, indifferent still. But for the first time in years, Adam felt a flicker of hope, a fragile flame in the darkness. And sometimes, that was enough to start again. The weight of silence. The city's night breathed coldly around them, indifferent to the two figures moving slowly beneath the amber glow of flickering street lamps. Shadows stretched like dark fingers over cracked sidewalks, and the faint hum of distant traffic mixed with the occasional restless bark of a stray dog. For most, the city was a place of hurried footsteps and endless noise, but for Adam and Layla, this evening carried a fragile stillness, a fragile pause in a world that never truly rested. Layla's small hand clung tightly to Adam's. Her fingers were trembling, though he could not tell if it was the chill creeping through the air or the unfamiliar weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. She had learned early in life that hands could provide warmth, but hands could also let go without warning, disappearing into emptiness. Tonight, hers remained clasped in his, but Adam knew that trust was a fragile thread, one that could unravel at any moment. Adam's thoughts were a tempest. The discovery that this fragile, wary child was his daughter unsettled him deeper than any corporate crisis he had ever faced. The years spent apart, missed birthdays, silent absences, they felt like walls made of cold stone, too high and steep to climb. Yet here he was, walking beside her, tasked with something far more personal than any business deal, rebuilding a broken family. The shelter awaited them ahead, tucked like a secret between two aging brick buildings. It was modest, far from the comfort Adam was used to, but it offered safety and warmth, two things Layla had not known for far too long. The faint scent of wood smoke drifted through the cracked doorway, mingling with the mustiness of worn blankets and faint traces of old meals. It was a far cry from the sterile, polished world Adam was accustomed to, but it felt honest. Inside, a middle-aged woman with tired but kind eyes greeted them. Her hands were rough from years of labor but moved gently as she knelt to meet Layla's gaze. "You are safe here, honey," she said softly. "We will look after you." Layla pressed her lips into a thin, skeptical line. Years of disappointment had taught her to guard herself carefully. "I do not like staying in places," she whispered, voice low and trembling. Adam nodded, understanding the pain behind those words better than he could say. Shelters were sanctuaries, yes, but also reminders of what was lost, the home she never had, the family she missed, the childhood stolen by circumstances beyond her control. They were never destinations, only brief pauses on a long, difficult journey. "I will be here," Adam promised quietly, voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "You will not be alone anymore." Her eyes flickered, a sudden, fragile glimmer of hope quickly buried beneath years of guarded experience. When she looked at him, really looked, Adam saw more than a lost child. He saw a quiet, desperate need to believe in something better. That night, while Layla slept on a thin cot wrapped in a threadbare blanket, Adam remained awake in the adjoining room. The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken words, regrets, and the weight of years lost to pride and silence. He wanted to scream, to apologize, to explain all the moments he had missed, but no words came. Instead, his gaze fell on the cracked watch around his wrist, the one symbol of time slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. His thoughts drifted to Maya, the woman who had loved fiercely, who had carried a child alone when he had turned away. The memories of her face, the sound of her laughter, and the pain of her absence haunted him. She had given him a daughter, a living reminder of what he had lost and what he might yet salvage. Outside, the city's cacophony dimmed to a distant murmur, but inside Adam's heart, a storm raged, regret tangled with fear, hope battling against the scars of silence, and determination battling despair. Healing was not a simple path. It was messy, unpredictable, and demanded more courage than any business challenge he had ever faced. But he owed Layla that courage. More than that, he owed himself the chance to begin again. Morning came slow and pale, slipping through the cracked window like a hesitant promise. Layla stirred, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and for a quiet moment, Adam simply watched, the soft rise and fall of her chest, the way the light softened the lines of worry etched too deeply into her young face. He wanted to promise her the world, to erase years of pain and neglect with a wave of his hand. But the truth was, he could only offer small beginnings. "Good morning," he he said gently, voice careful and warm. Her eyes blinked up at him, adjusting to the light. Did you stay? She asked, as if needing to know he was really there. Yes, he replied without hesitation. She nodded once, a simple gesture but one heavy with meaning. It was trust, fragile and tentative, and he accepted it with quiet reverence. They shared a breakfast of stale bread and weak tea, but the warmth of the food seemed to spread through Layla's fingers like a small comfort, a brief respite from hunger and cold. The silence between them was no longer heavy but peaceful, a shared space where healing could begin. After breakfast, Adam took Layla's hand again and led her outside. The streets had awakened, busy with people rushing to their daily routines, unaware of the small, quiet story unfolding amid the chaos, a story of a man and a child trying to reclaim lost time and broken bonds. He knew the days ahead would be fraught with challenges. Trust would not come easily. Pain would surface in unexpected moments. Memories too painful to speak aloud would resurface, demanding attention. But he was ready to face it all. Because sometimes, the heaviest burden people carry is not the past itself, but the silence surrounding it, the unspoken apologies, the absent words, and the distance measured not in miles, but in moments left unshared. Breaking that silence was the first step toward freedom. And for Adam and Layla, it was a step they would take together, one tentative handhold at a time. Hidden truths. The early morning sun filtered through dusty windows, casting long shafts of light onto the cold floor. In the modest room that had become their temporary refuge, silence hung thick like a curtain. Outside, the city stirred awake, but inside, time seemed to slow, as if holding its breath, waiting for the fragile threads of connection between Adam and Layla to grow stronger. Layla sat quietly at the small wooden table, tracing invisible patterns with her fingers. Her eyes, still shadowed with fatigue, flicked occasionally toward the cracked door. She was cautious, her spirit folded tight like a secret kept too long. Trust was not easily given, especially not to a man who had been absent for most of her life. Adam watched her from across the room, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the distance between them, a distance not measured in steps or years, but in silence and unspoken truths. The moment to bridge that gap was looming, but how? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a faded photograph. It was worn at the edges, the ink slightly smudged by years of handling. The picture showed a younger Maya, her face alight with joy, holding a small bundle swaddled in soft blankets. A baby, a promise of life and hope, but also a reminder of the past they could not change. He placed the photo gently on the table, moving it closer to Layla. She looked up, her brow furrowed, eyes flicking between the image and his face. "Who is this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "That," Adam said carefully, "is your mother." For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Layla's gaze lingered on the photograph, searching for something, a connection, a memory, a story that made sense of the pieces scattered across her life. "I never knew her," she said softly. Adam swallowed hard. She was a remarkable woman. Strong, kind, and full of love. She wanted to give you everything she could, even when life was hard. The words felt inadequate, like a thin thread trying to hold together a vast chasm of loss. He wanted to tell her more, about Maya's laughter, her dreams, the sacrifices she made, but the right words eluded him. Layla reached out and touched the photo, her fingers tracing the outline of the woman's face. "Why did she leave me?" Adam's heart clenched. "She did not leave you. She loved you more than anything. Sometimes, life forces us to make choices that are hard to understand. But she never stopped thinking about you." Tears welled in Layla's eyes. For so long, she had carried the weight of abandonment, the silence that swallowed questions and replaced them with doubts. Now, faced with this fragile truth, the walls she had built trembled. "I wanted to meet her," she whispered. "I wanted to know her laugh, her stories." Adam nodded, wishing he could reach back through time and change the past. "I wish I could have been there too." The silence returned, but it was different now, softer, filled with unspoken understanding. It was a quiet beginning, the first step toward healing. Later that day, they ventured outside into the bustling streets. Adam walked beside Layla, feeling the strange but comforting rhythm of shared steps. The city pulsed around them, vendors calling out, children playing, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the sharp tang of exhaust fumes. They stopped at a small bookshop tucked between two storefronts. Adam hesitated before stepping inside, memories flooding back of quieter days when Maya had loved to read to their daughter. He found a worn copy of a children's book, its pages yellowed but still full of life. Handing it to Layla, he smiled gently. "For you. Stories are a way to hold on to the past and dream about the future." She accepted the book, eyes lighting up for a fleeting moment. "Thank you." As they left the shop, a street musician began to play a soft tune on his violin, the notes weaving through the air like a balm for tired souls. Layla stopped, closing her eyes to listen. For a moment, the city faded away, leaving only the music and the fragile hope that grew between two unlikely companions. That night, Adam found himself staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's moments. He knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, the shadows of the past would not disappear overnight. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of something stronger than regret, determination. Determination to be a father. To be present. To rebuild what had been broken. And Layla, tucked safely in the next room, dreamed of a future where love could fill the spaces left empty for so long. Fractured bonds. The first light of dawn crept through the cracked window panes of their small apartment, casting a pale glow over the scattered remnants of yesterday's hurried breakfast. Outside, the city was already stirring, but inside, a heavier silence lingered. It was a silence born not of peace, but of tension, of words left unsaid and memories too painful to revisit just yet. Adam sat on the edge of the narrow bed, rubbing his tired eyes. The past days had been a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and tentative steps toward a connection he was only beginning to understand. Yet, despite the small moments of warmth shared with Layla, he could feel the invisible walls rising again, the barriers forged not just by time, but by years of abandonment and mistrust. Layla was still asleep, curled beneath a thin blanket that did little to shield her from the chill that seemed to settle in her bones. She had carried too much for someone so young, and the scars of her journey were etched deep beneath her quiet demeanor. Adam rose, pacing the room as the weight of their fractured family pressed down on him. He knew the path to healing was fraught with setbacks, and today, that truth would confront them head-on. A soft knock at the door startled him. Standing there was Mara, a social worker who had been their liaison since Layla's arrival. Her face was kind but serious, eyes reflecting the heavy responsibility she bore. "We need to talk," she said gently, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Adam nodded, gesturing for her to sit. Layla stirred in the next room, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Mara took a deep breath. "There are concerns from the agency about the situation here," she began carefully. "Layla's been through a lot, and while progress has been made, the trauma she carries runs deep. We want to ensure she has the support she needs." Adam's jaw tightened. "I understand. I want to be there for her. I want to fix this." Mara gave a small, sympathetic smile. "It is not about fixing, Adam. It's about patience and presence. Layla needs stability, routine, and trust. That will take time." The words resonated, but the challenge ahead felt overwhelming. Later that morning, Layla sat by the window, watching the city below with a distant gaze. The soft light caught the tears she did not allow herself to cry. The past whispered in her mind, the losses, the loneliness, the unanswered questions. Adam approached slowly, unsure of how to bridge the gulf between them. "Layla," he began softly. "Can we talk?" She looked up, eyes wary but open enough to invite conversation. He pulled the photo of Maya from his pocket again, placing it gently on the table. "Your mother loved you," he said. "More than you know." Layla's voice was barely audible. "Why did she not stay?" Adam's heart ached. "Because life was complicated. She fought every day to protect you, even when it meant making sacrifices." They sat together in silence, the unspoken words filling the space between them. Days turned into weeks. The fragile threads of their relationship were tested repeatedly, through moments of anger, confusion, and unexpected tenderness. One afternoon, a sudden knock at the door shattered their routine. Standing there was Michael, Adam's estranged brother. His presence was a stark reminder of the family fractures Adam had tried to bury beneath layers of work and denial. "Adam," Michael said, voice heavy with years of unspoken resentment. "We need to talk. About the past. About Layla." Adam's gaze hardened. "This is not the time." Michael's eyes flickered with regret. "It will never be the right time if we keep avoiding it." Reluctantly, Adam let him in. The conversation that followed was painful, raw, and necessary. They spoke of mistakes, missed chances, and the heavy cost of silence. Michael admitted his own guilt, the years he had turned away, the moments he could not change. "Layla deserves better," he said quietly. "We all do." In the days that followed, Adam found himself confronting parts of his past he had long ignored. The fractures within his family mirrored those in his own heart. Healing would not come from avoidance but from facing the pain head-on. Meanwhile, Layla began to open in small ways. She laughed more often, asked questions about Maya, and even let Adam hold her hand without pulling away. One evening, as they sat together beneath the stars, Layla whispered, "Will you stay? Even when I am hard to love?" Adam smiled, the weight of her words settling deep within him. "I will stay. Always." The city's lights twinkled around them, a quiet witness to a family struggling to mend what was broken, one fragile, beautiful moment at a time. Fractured memories. The soft light of morning filtered through the thin curtains, casting a muted glow across the worn furniture of their small apartment. Layla sat cross-legged on the floor, a battered notebook resting in her lap. The pages were filled with uneven handwriting and colorful sketches, a secret world she had created to hold her scattered thoughts and silent dreams. For her, these drawings were more than simple art, they were fragments of a life she yearned to understand. Adam watched her quietly from the doorway, a mixture of admiration and sadness tightening his chest. Each page revealed a glimpse of her world, a kaleidoscope of hope and pain, innocence and fear. He longed to reach through the gaps of time and heal the wounds left by years of absence, but he knew that no apology or promise could erase the past. "You have a gift," he said softly, stepping closer. Layla looked up, startled by his voice. She brushed a stray lock of hair from her face and smiled faintly. "It helps me remember," she whispered. Adam nodded, understanding more than she realized. Memory was a double-edged sword, sometimes a sanctuary, other times a prison. For Layla, those fragmented moments of joy and sorrow formed the scaffolding of her identity. "Tell me about these," he encouraged, pointing to a page where a small girl stood beneath a tree, her face turned toward a radiant sun. "That is me," Layla said, voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Before everything changed." Adam's throat tightened. The innocence captured in that simple drawing was a sharp contrast to the guarded child sitting before him. "What changed, Layla?" She hesitated, eyes clouding with a storm of emotion. "Everything." The shelter closed. The cold nights. The hunger. The silence when no one was there. Her words hung heavy in the air, each one a shard of a broken past. Adam reached out, brushing his fingers over her hand, a small gesture meant to convey a promise of presence. The days that followed were filled with quiet conversations and shared memories, both real and imagined. Layla began to open the book further, revealing sketches of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This is my mother," she said softly. "She sang to me." Adam's heart ached at the mention of Maya, the woman whose absence shaped their lives. "She loved you very much," he said. One afternoon, Adam found himself wandering the neighborhood, drawn to an old park where he and Maya had once walked together. The trees stood tall and silent, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. He imagined Layla playing beneath their branches, laughter filling the air like sunlight. Back in the apartment, Layla sat by the window, clutching a small, worn teddy bear. It was a gift from Maya, a remnant of a time when hope was not yet lost. Layla's eyes filled with tears, but she held the bear tightly, as if it contained the strength to face another day. That evening, Adam sat beside her, careful not to break the fragile peace. "Would you like to hear a story?" he asked. Layla nodded, wiping away a tear. He began to recount tales of Maya's kindness, her dreams, and the love she had for both of them. His voice was steady, filled with reverence and regret. For the first time, Layla felt connected to the mother she had never truly known, a bond forged through words and memories, fragile but real. As the nights passed, the apartment grew warmer, not from the small heater humming quietly in the corner, but from the growing light of trust and understanding. The fractured memories, once scattered and painful, began to weave together, creating a tapestry of hope. Yet, beneath the surface, shadows remained. Layla's past was not easily left behind. The fear of loss lingered, a silent companion that whispered doubts in moments of vulnerability. Adam sensed this, and he knew that healing would require patience beyond words. One rainy afternoon, Layla recoiled at the sudden crash of thunder. She pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide with fear. Adam moved swiftly, wrapping her in a blanket and speaking softly, grounding her with steady words. "It is okay," he assured her. "You are safe now." The storm outside mirrored the tempest within, both a reminder of the fragility of peace and the resilience required to endure. In these moments, Adam realized that their journey was not just about rebuilding a family, but about mending the pieces of two broken souls learning to trust again. The past was a shadow that would always follow, but it did not have to define their future. As the days turned into weeks, Layla's drawings grew more vibrant, her smiles more frequent. She began to speak of dreams, a small seed planted in the fertile soil of newfound love. Adam held onto those dreams, nurturing them with quiet devotion. Together, they faced the fractured memories, not as wounds to hide, but as stories to honor and understand. And in that shared space of vulnerability and strength, they found a fragile but enduring hope, a promise that even the deepest scars could one day heal. Bridges of trust. The city was a tangle of noise and movement, a place where countless lives intersected but few truly connected. For Layla and Adam, the outside world was a vast, unpredictable expanse, both daunting and full of possibility. The walls of their small apartment had held them close, but the next step demanded they step beyond that fragile safety, toward a future that neither could fully imagine yet. The morning sun warmed the worn wooden floor as Adam prepared a simple breakfast. The aroma of toast and brewing tea filled the air, a small act of normalcy amidst the chaos of their intertwined lives. Layla sat at the table, her fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug, eyes distant but attentive. "Would you like to go outside today?" Adam asked softly, his voice careful not to startle her. Layla hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I want to see the park again." Adam smiled, relieved by the small victory. The park was a place of memories and beginnings, where the past met the present under the shelter of ancient trees. As they stepped into the sunlight, Layla's steps were tentative at first, uncertain of the world that stretched before her. But with each breath of fresh air, her shoulders relaxed, and a glimmer of curiosity sparked in her eyes. They walked slowly along the winding paths, the city's hum softened by the rustle of leaves and chirping birds. Children played nearby, their laughter bright and free, a stark contrast to the guarded silence Layla often carried. Adam watched her closely, mindful of the fragile balance between encouragement and pressure. Trust was a bridge that needed careful construction, laid stone by stone, word by word. They stopped by a small pond, its surface reflecting the sky like a shattered mirror. Layla knelt by the edge, tossing pebbles into the water with quiet fascination. The ripples spread outward, distorting the reflection and then fading away, a simple reminder that change was constant, even when it felt slow. "You know," Adam began, "when I was your age, I used to come here with my mother. We would sit for hours, watching the ducks and talking about the future." Layla looked up, eyes wide. "What did you dream about?" He smiled wistfully. "I dreamed about being brave. About fixing things that were broken." She considered this, her gaze returning to the shimmering water. "I want to be brave too." The words hung in the air, a quiet vow between two souls seeking strength. As they continued their walk, Adam shared stories from his childhood, tales of mishaps, small victories, and lessons learned. Layla listened, occasionally interjecting with her own memories or questions. The barrier of silence that had once separated them began to crumble, replaced by a tentative dialogue that nourished their connection. Their path led them to a small playground, where a group of children played under the watchful eyes of parents. Layla hesitated at the edge, eyes flicking toward the other kids with a mixture of longing and fear. Adam knelt beside her. "Would you like to join them?" She bit her lip, uncertainty clouding her features. "What if they don't want me?" He took her hand gently. "They will. You just have to give them a chance." Slowly, Layla stepped forward, her small hand tightening around his before releasing it to reach out to the nearest child, a boy with bright eyes and a mischievous grin. "Hi," she said shyly. The boy smiled back. "Hi. Wanna play?" A tentative laugh escaped Layla's lips. The bridge to the world beyond was fragile but real. Over the next few weeks, Adam and Layla ventured out more frequently, building routines that wove them deeper into the fabric of the community. Each new experience brought challenges, moments of doubt, awkwardness, and old fears resurfacing. But with each step, trust grew stronger. One afternoon, as they returned from the park, a neighbor approached them. Mrs. Hernandez was an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She had noticed Layla's quiet resilience and Adam's steadfast presence. "You're doing a wonderful job," she said warmly. "It takes courage to heal from such wounds." Adam nodded gratefully. "We are learning together." Mrs. Hernandez reached into her bag and pulled out a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For Layla," she said. "Because every new beginning deserves a celebration." Layla accepted the flowers, her smile genuine and bright. The simple act of kindness was a balm for her weary heart. That evening, as they sat by the window watching the city lights flicker to life, Layla spoke softly. "I think I'm starting to trust again." Adam's eyes glistened with emotion. "That means more than you know." They both understood that trust was not a destination but a journey, a delicate dance of vulnerability and strength. Yet, beneath the surface of their growing bond, shadows from the past lingered, waiting for the right moment to surface. One night, Adam received a call that shattered the fragile peace. It was a lawyer's voice, delivering news that would force them to confront the consequences of choices made long ago. The walls of their sanctuary trembled as the past reached forward, demanding reckoning. But this time, they would face it together. Reckoning. The phone rang just past 9 p.m., slicing through the quiet like a blade. Adam paused in the middle of rinsing dishes, hands dripping, heart stilling. He stared at the old phone resting on the counter, its sudden sound unwelcome but insistent, like the past finally demanding its due. After 2 more rings, he reached for it, drying his hands hastily on a towel. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was professional, distant, yet somehow heavy with consequence. "Mr. Adam Malik?" "Yes, speaking." "My name is Gregory Shaw. I represent Shaw and Harmon Law Offices. I am calling on behalf of your late father's estate. There are unresolved legal matters that now require your immediate attention. I need you to be present at our office first thing tomorrow morning." The words fell like ice into Adam's stomach. His grip on the receiver tightened. "My father has been gone for years," he said, confused and already wary. "Yes," the voice confirmed. "But his estate remains complicated. And you are the only one positioned to address what comes next." The call ended after brief formalities, but the air in the room felt charged, as if the walls themselves had overheard something they wished they hadn't. Adam stood frozen for a few seconds before slowly placing the receiver down, then turned. Layla stood in the hallway, wrapped in the oversized sweatshirt she liked to sleep in, her feet bare on the wooden floor. "What happened?" she asked. Her voice was soft but serious, a tone that had grown more frequent in the past few months. Adam sighed, rubbing his face. "Something from my past. Something I thought I had left behind." I have to meet a lawyer tomorrow, for my father's estate. She nodded once, not pressing him for more, but watching with those wide eyes that saw far beyond what words revealed. We'll face it, she said simply. The next morning brought with it a gray, damp light. Clouds hung low over the city as Adam and Layla walked through the streets. The law office towered ahead of them like a monument to control and silence, pristine glass windows, polished marble steps, and air too clean to be honest. Inside, everything was cold. Cold desks. Cold handshakes. Cold words. Gregory Shaw, a thin man with gray hair slicked too perfectly, motioned for Adam to sit as Layla remained quietly beside him. She drew in her sketchbook while Adam tried to absorb the wave of papers laid before him. The summary was unsettling. His father had left behind a legal mess. Lawsuits, debt, and, worse, whispers of betrayal involving a former business partner. This man, once close to the family, had allegedly siphoned funds, falsified contracts, and left Adam's father vulnerable in his final years. The damage extended beyond finances. It fractured reputations, stained legacies, and buried truths beneath decades of silence. Adam stared at the documents, each page a painful reminder that history never truly rests. His father had been many things, brilliant, harsh, absent, but this mess painted a man unraveling behind the curtain. I thought I was done with all of this, Adam muttered under his breath. Mr. Shaw looked up from his notes. Unfortunately, your position in the will, as well as your legal relationship to the estate, makes you the central figure in resolving these matters. Layla noticed the tension in Adam's shoulders. She reached for his hand, grounding him. He squeezed hers in return, not for comfort, but for steadiness. By afternoon, the city had turned humid, the sky pressing down like it knew secrets too. They exited the building in silence. Adam's thoughts were a storm, shame, confusion, anger, all colliding in one pulsing ache behind his ribs. I never wanted to carry this, he finally said. Layla looked up. But maybe carrying it is part of fixing it. Her words echoed louder than the cars passing by. Back home, they sat side by side on the worn couch. Adam scrolled through old emails, newspaper archives, court filings. The deeper he dug, the more tangled it became. Not just in numbers and legal jargon, but in emotion. Every lie unearthed was a reminder of everything he had spent a lifetime running from. That night, Layla's drawings changed. Instead of soft lines and hopeful colors, her papers were filled with sharp angles and splintered shapes, houses cracked down the middle, bridges crumbling mid-span, hearts split in two. What's this? Adam asked, kneeling beside her. She didn't look up. It's what it feels like when things break. Even when you don't see it happening. Adam studied the pictures. They mirrored exactly what he felt inside. He exhaled slowly and pulled her into a hug. I feel broken too, he whispered. Her arms tightened around him. The next week was an exhausting blur. Adam met with accountants, responded to threats of lawsuits, and exchanged cold, clipped emails with his estranged brother, Amir, a man who had disappeared years ago and now emerged only to claim his rightful share. Their exchanges were bitter, loaded with resentment. Amir believed Adam had walked away from the family, abandoning responsibility. Adam believed Amir had buried their father in shame. The tension mounted. One evening, after a particularly hostile phone call, Adam sat at the dining table long after Layla had gone to bed, staring at a photograph he found tucked inside an old ledger. It was of him and Amir, children still, sitting in their backyard. Their father stood behind them, a rare smile on his face, his hand resting firmly on Adam's shoulder. That picture haunted him. It reminded him of what once was, before ambition, pride, and silence tore everything apart. The next day, something unexpected happened. An anonymous package arrived. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note that read, "There are things you deserve to know. For both your sake and hers." It was unsigned. Adam plugged it into his laptop, heart pounding. Dozens of files appeared. Secret recordings, financial records, internal memos, all pointing to the former business partner's corruption. hidden assets, bribes, blackmail. There was even a letter from Adam's father, never sent, addressed to him, an apology, a plea for understanding, and a confession that he knew about the child Adam had left behind, and he regretted every moment of silence. Adam read the letter twice, then a third time. He could barely breathe. His father had known. His father had wanted to fix things, but pride stood in the way. He walked to Layla's room. She was awake, curled under her blanket, holding the stuffed rabbit he had bought her weeks ago. "I found something," Adam said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "About my father. About all of this. And about you." Layla looked up slowly. "I think he wanted to know you. He just never got the chance." Silence stretched between them. "Do you think he would have liked me?" she asked, voice trembling. Adam felt tears rising but kept them at bay. "He would have loved you." And for the first time in days, Layla reached for him first. Outside, the night deepened, but inside that small apartment, something began to mend, not perfectly, but enough to matter. Tomorrow, the battle will continue. The estate, the courts, the brother, the past, it was all still there. But tonight, something heavier had lifted. The reckoning was not just legal or financial. It was personal. And it had just begun. Cracks in the foundation. The morning sun rose heavy behind the clouds, casting a pale gray across the window pane as Adam sat on the edge of the couch, holding the letter from his father in both hands. The edges were worn now, creased from being opened and folded too many times over the past few days. Yet each time he read it, it felt new. Raw. A confession inked with guilt and remorse, from a man who had built an empire on silence. Layla was still asleep, her breathing calm. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional hum of traffic outside and the ticking wall clock. Adam's thoughts, however, were anything but still. His past, long buried, had returned like a tide he could no longer push back. The note inside the anonymous package had not just changed his understanding of his father. It had cracked open something much deeper, the realization that secrets do not rot quietly. They echo. They shape lives they were never meant to touch. And Layla, his daughter, had been living in the wake of a silence she never chose. He stood and walked to the small kitchen, pouring himself a cup of coffee he did not really want. His hands trembled slightly. He hated that. He had always prided himself on composure, but these days, his armor was failing. There was a knock at the door. He flinched. It was early. No one ever came this early. He opened it slowly and found himself face to face with someone he had not seen in years. Amir. His brother. The man who had not called when their father died. The one who had walked away and then returned only when inheritance was at stake. Amir looked tired. Not just physically, but in his bones. He held a file in his hand and raised it like a reluctant peace offering. "I got something in the mail," Amir said. "Looks like someone wants both of us to see the truth." Adam stepped aside without a word. They sat across from each other, like strangers pretending to be family. Amir handed over the file, more financial records, this time dating back over 2 decades. Hidden transfers. Silent partners. Evidence their father had been betrayed slowly, methodically, by the man he once called his most trusted ally. "I thought you were the one who abandoned him," Adam finally said. "That you didn't care." Amir looked up, jaw clenched. "And I thought you were the golden son who took everything. But maybe we both believed the lies we were told." Silence settled between them. It was not peaceful, it was heavy, like the air before a storm. Layla stirred in the other room, her voice faint. "Baba?" Adam stood, walking over quickly. "I'm here, sweetheart." She blinked sleepily. "Was someone at the door?" "Yes." "It's your Uncle Amir." Layla looked confused. "I have an uncle." Adam nodded slowly. "Yes. And I think it's time you knew more about our family." The rest of the morning unfolded in layers, some painful, some unexpectedly tender. They sat around the small dining table, sharing memories, clarifying stories, correcting misconceptions. For the first time in years, Adam and Amir spoke not as adversaries, but as sons of the same complicated father. They were not trying to win anything anymore, they were just trying to understand what had been lost. Later that afternoon, Adam received another call from Gregory Shaw. The attorney's tone was more formal than usual, but with a hint of urgency. "There has been a new filing from the estate's former financial advisor," he said. "He is requesting a closed-door mediation session. He claims he wants to clear his name, and yours." Adam was stunned. Why now? Perhaps he feels the walls closing in. Or perhaps, like so many men who built their lives on power, he thinks he can still control the outcome. Adam agreed to the session. It was set for Friday. That gave him 4 days, 4 days to prepare, to gather everything, to shield Layla from the weight of what might come. The following nights were sleepless. Adam pored over every document again, highlighting inconsistencies, linking dates and amounts. Amir helped, surprisingly. His bitterness had cooled into something like regret. They worked late into the night, sharing old photos and unfinished conversations. Meanwhile, Layla noticed the shift. "You're not angry all the time anymore," she said one evening, curled beside Adam on the couch. He looked down at her, brushing her hair behind her ear. "That's because I'm starting to forgive myself." "For what?" "For waiting too long to come back." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You came back just in time for me." Adam swallowed the lump in his throat and held her close. Friday came fast. The mediation room was sterile, beige walls, high-backed chairs, a table too long for comfort. Across from Adam sat the man who had, piece by piece, dismantled his father's empire. His name was Julian de Souza, a man with salt and pepper hair, a tailored suit, and eyes that revealed very little. "I came today because I do not want my grandchildren to read lies about me one day," Julian began. Adam said nothing. Julian continued, detailing his version of events. He admitted to some missteps, framed others as strategic moves, but ultimately shifted blame onto Adam's father, claiming he was slipping and needed guidance. When Adam finally spoke, his voice was steady. "You robbed a man of his legacy and let his sons grow up hating each other. You call it strategy. I call it cowardice." Julian did not flinch. "I built that company too. I did what I had to do." "You had a choice," Adam said. "And you chose self-preservation over decency." The mediator interjected, asking if either party was willing to settle. Adam leaned forward. "I don't want money. I want the truth. I want a full statement of what you did, made public. My daughter deserves to grow up with honesty, not shadows." Julian hesitated, then nodded. "You'll have it. In writing. But I want a clause, no criminal charges." Adam stood, cold and resolute. "Then you better make sure every word is honest. Because if I find even one lie, I will burn your empire down myself." They left the room with signed papers and uneasy peace. That night, Adam returned home to Layla and Amir waiting. He handed Layla a copy of the agreement. "This means the story ends?" she asked. "No," he replied, kneeling in front of her. "It means we get to write the next chapter ourselves." Amir stepped forward, extending a hand. "Brothers?" he asked. Adam looked at him, then pulled him into a hug. "Brothers," he said. And for the first time since they were children, it felt real. Echoes of blood and forgiveness. The storm outside broke just as dawn peeked across the skyline. Rain tapped steadily on the windows, a soft, rhythmic reminder that the world moved on even when hearts were heavy and wounds were fresh. Adam stood by the window, holding a steaming mug of tea, his eyes following the beads of rain as they slid down the glass. Behind him, Layla sat at the dining table, coloring quietly, her head tilted with childlike focus. Amir, still adjusting to being part of their lives again, was on the couch, flipping through old photo albums they found buried in their father's storage unit. For once, the apartment felt lived in. Yet Adam knew peace was fragile. Though Julian de Souza had signed a statement confessing to key acts of financial manipulation, the fallout was far from over. News had spread quickly. Headlines painted a complicated picture. Some saw Adam as a whistleblower, others accused him of trying to rewrite history for sympathy or revenge. His father's legacy was under a microscope again. And not all lenses were kind. Still, Adam had made his choice. He had chosen the truth. And truth, he was learning, it was rarely easy. As the kettle whistled again, he poured Layla another cup of warm milk and set it beside her. She looked up, smiling faintly. "Thanks, Baba." He ruffled her hair, letting the silence between them speak for what words could not. Later that morning, the knock at the door came again. Softer this time. A familiar rhythm. It was Miriam, their mother's old friend. A woman who had once rocked Adam to sleep, who had held Amir's hand at his mother's funeral. They had not seen her in nearly 15 years. "I heard," she said simply, stepping inside and brushing water from her coat. "And I thought it was time." Adam watched her eyes sweep the room, the modest furniture, the peeling wallpaper, the framed drawing Layla had pinned beside the light switch. "You have made a home," Miriam said softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Trying to," Adam replied. She handed him a faded envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed with wax that had long since cracked. "I found this among your mother's things," she said. "She told me to give it to you if you ever came back." Adam stared at the letter for a long time. The edges trembled in his hand. "I did not know she wrote anything," he whispered. "She wrote many things," Miriam replied. "But this one was for you." He opened it slowly, as if it might crumble. Inside was a short note, written in delicate, familiar handwriting. "My dearest Adam. If you are reading this, it means the shadows have lifted just enough for truth to breathe. I know your father's legacy was never light to carry. I know he hurt you. But I also know he loved you in the only way he could, with pride disguised as silence. Please forgive him. And forgive yourself. There is so much of him in you. But there is more of me too. I see it in your kindness. In your fight. In your tears. Do not let the past keep you from your future. Love, always, Mom." The paper slipped from Adam's hand as his shoulders crumbled. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just stared at the floor while tears slid silently down his face. Layla came up beside him and took his hand. He squeezed it, grounding himself. Amir stepped forward, voice unsteady. "She never got to see this version of us. But maybe," Adam said quietly, "she hoped for it." The letter sparked something. A day later, Adam took Layla and Amir to the cemetery. It was raining again, not harsh, just steady. They stood before the gravestones of their parents, cleaned off the moss, and placed 2 fresh lilies on each one. Layla stared at her grandmother's name. "She was my age once, huh?" Adam nodded. "And scared, and brave, and soft-hearted, just like you." She smiled at that, and placed one of her drawings at the foot of the stone. It was a picture of a small house, 3 people inside, holding hands. As they walked back to the car, Amir asked quietly, "Do you think we're actually okay now?" Adam thought for a moment. "Not okay," he said. "But closer than we've ever been." That night, Adam wrote something he never thought he would, an open letter to the press, addressing the family's past, the mistakes made, and the reason he chose to speak up. But more than that, it was a letter to his daughter, a record of strength, weakness, and the choice to rise anyway. He read it aloud before hitting send. "We are not defined by our bloodlines, or the empires we inherit, or the lies we are told as children. We are defined by who we become after truth knocks us to the ground. I am not just my father's son. I am Layla's father. And that changes everything." When he finished, Layla clapped quietly. "You sound brave," she whispered. Adam laughed, wiping his eyes. "I was just hoping to sound honest." The following week, things shifted again. Public perception softened. Support poured in. Former employees of Adam's father's company came forward with their own stories, people who had been silenced, manipulated, overlooked. The ripple effect was undeniable. One evening, Adam received a video message from a young woman in another country. She held a dandelion. "My father ran from his truth, too," she said. "But your story gave me the courage to ask questions. Thank you." Adam watched the video twice. Then 3 times. Then showed it to Layla, who looked at the dandelion and whispered, "That was mine." He nodded. And it changed everything. When truth stands tall. The city had a different rhythm now. Not quieter, just clearer. After weeks of noise, judgment, and old wounds resurfacing, Adam stood before a crowd of journalists, former employees, supporters, and skeptics. A press conference had not been part of his plan, but sometimes, the only way to end a whisper was to speak louder than fear. The hall was packed. Cameras rolled. Microphones blinked like anxious eyes. Adam stepped to the podium, wearing the same plain gray blazer he had worn to his first job interview over 2 decades ago. He did not want to look like a CEO. He wanted to look like a man willing to be honest, even when honesty cost more than silence. His hands did not shake anymore. He glanced down once, where Layla sat in the front row beside Amir, her small hands gripping the hem of her sweater. She gave him a tiny nod. That was all he needed. He looked up and spoke. "I stand here not because I want to protect my name, but because I want to give my daughter a better one." There was a pause. A breath. And then he began. He told them the whole truth, about the empire his father had built, the cracks he chose not to see, the silence he had accepted as a form of protection. He spoke of complicity, not in action, but in cowardice. And then, he spoke of change. Truth is not a light switch. You do not flip it on one day and walk in brightness. Truth is slow. It burns. But it also builds. As his words settled, silence followed. The kind of silence that comes not from disbelief, but from people holding their breath. He stepped down. The applause came slowly, then stronger. Not wild, but genuine. People rose to their feet, not because he had told them what they wanted to hear, but because he had not run away. That evening, Adam did not celebrate. Instead, he took Layla to the park where he had first seen her. The same bench. The same tree. The same wind that had once ignored him now danced softly through the grass. Layla ran ahead, her little feet chasing a butterfly. Her laugh carried through the evening air like a song he had almost forgotten. "Did I do okay?" he asked Amir, who walked beside him. "You did more than okay," Amir replied. "You stood up for everything we once thought was broken." Adam exhaled. "I still feel like there's more to fix." "There always will be," Amir said, then added with a smile, "but not everything needs fixing alone." At the bench, Adam sat down. Layla skipped back, holding a handful of wildflowers, dandelions, clovers, and tiny bluebells. "I made you a bouquet," she said, proudly handing it over. Adam took it carefully, as if it were glass. "Perfect," he whispered. She climbed beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Is everything okay now?" she asked. He hesitated. "No," he said honestly. "But we're a lot closer." In the days that followed, Layla's artwork, now filled with bridges, sunrises, and smiling faces, caught the attention of a local artist who offered to mentor her. For a girl who once drew in the shadows of trauma, her colors now spoke of healing. Adam, meanwhile, joined a legal advocacy group to help families navigate corporate injustice. It was a small step, but it felt like redemption, not for what he had done, but for what he could now do. He met other men like him, sons who had carried their father's sins like stones in their pockets. Each one trying to lay those stones down without letting them define the path ahead. One evening, as Adam reviewed some legal case files at home, Layla tugged at his sleeve. "I need to ask you something." He looked up. "Anything." Do you think my real mother would be proud of me? Adam paused. He had never spoken much about her mother, partly out of pain, partly out of fear. He knelt before Layla and held her face gently in his palms. She would be more than proud, he said. She would look at you and think, I gave the world something beautiful. Layla smiled, but tears slipped down her cheeks. I miss her, she whispered. Adam wrapped his arms around her. So do I. Weeks later, they received an invitation to a memorial unveiling, a new children's center funded in part by the reparations Adam's case had helped spark. A place where kids like Layla could find shelter, food, education, and, most importantly, hope. Adam insisted Layla cut the ribbon. As cameras flashed and people clapped, Layla stood tall in her simple white dress, holding scissors almost as big as her hands. She smiled nervously, then whispered, "This is for all the kids who are still waiting." She cut the ribbon, and the crowd roared. A new chapter had begun, not just for them, but for many. That night, Adam could not sleep. He stood once again by the window, looking at the skyline, now etched with new meaning. Layla joined him, holding 2 mugs of hot milk. "One for you," she said, offering one. "And one for me." They stood together in silence. The city, once a place of grief, now shimmered with the quiet possibility of peace. "Do you think this will last?" she asked. "I do not know," he said truthfully. "But I know we will last." She leaned her head on his arm. "Then that's enough. Redemption does not erase the past. It simply says, I see it. And I still choose better." When truth stands tall. The city was waking up slowly. The faint light of dawn spilled over the rooftops, catching droplets of rain that clung stubbornly to window panes. Inside their modest apartment, Adam stood motionless by the window, watching as the world outside began its relentless march forward. The storm had passed, but its traces lingered everywhere, broken branches, puddles shimmering with fragments of the gray sky, and a weight in Adam's chest he could not shake. This morning felt different. It was the morning after the press conference, the day after his truth had spilled from his lips and into the cold, hungry eyes of the public. The words he had rehearsed countless times in his mind had finally found their way into the light. He had spoken of betrayal, silence, and legacy. Of his father's empire built on dreams and deceit, and his own choice to break free from that shadow. But no matter how much he tried, the knot in his stomach refused to loosen. "Baba?" Layla's soft voice pulled him back from his thoughts. She stood behind him, clutching her small stuffed bear, her hair damp from the early morning mist. Adam smiled, the corners of his lips trembling slightly. "Good morning, little one." She stepped closer, her eyes wide with cautious hope. "Did I make you proud yesterday?" He crouched down to her level, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You made me more proud than words can say." She smiled faintly, her fingers tracing patterns on the cold glass beside him. "Do you think people will believe you?" He sighed, the weight of his role pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Some will. Some will not. But I told the truth. And that is what matters." Layla's gaze held his, steady and unwavering, as if she understood more than her 7 years should allow. Adam's mind drifted back to the weeks of turmoil that had led to this moment. The phone calls, the confrontations with lawyers, the endless nights poring over dusty ledgers and hidden documents that told stories of greed and broken trust. His father's legacy was a labyrinth of secrets, some buried too deep to dig up without shaking the ground beneath them. He remembered the night Layla had given the dandelion to the stranger on the park bench, the man who was his father, though neither of them knew it then. The way that simple gesture had cracked the hard shell of years of silence and regret. A seed planted in forgotten soil, now sprouting painfully toward the light. His heart ached for the years lost. The storm outside intensified, thunder rolling softly in the distance, as Adam turned from the window and crossed the room. He pulled on his coat and beckoned Layla to follow. "We have a day ahead," he said quietly. The streets thrummed with life, the city in full pulse now. People rushed to work, their faces tired but determined. Vendors arranged their stalls, Children chased each other with laughter, and somewhere in the distance, the faint chime of a church bell rang out. Adam held Layla's hand tightly as they navigated the crowded sidewalks. Her small fingers curled around his, anchoring him as much as he anchored her. Their destination was the community center where the press conference had taken place. But today, it was something different, a meeting with a group of people whose stories mirrored their own. Survivors of corporate betrayal, families torn apart by lies, and strangers united by the fragile thread of shared pain. Inside the warm, sunlit room, faces turned toward them with wary hope. Some were young, others old, some eyes bore the fire of anger, others shimmered with tears barely held back. Adam cleared his throat, feeling the weight of countless expectations settle on him like a mantle. "I am not here to fix the past," he began. "I am here to build the future." He told them his story, not the polished version told to reporters, but the raw, unvarnished truth. The fear of losing everything. The guilt of silence. The courage it took to speak up despite the consequences. One woman, her hands trembling, stood and shared her own tale, a small business swallowed by a larger corporation connected to Adam's family's empire. Another man spoke of the financial ruin his father's secrets had wrought on his family. Each story was a thread in a tapestry of wounds and resilience. As the hours passed, plans formed. Support groups, legal assistance, education programs, all designed to give power back to those who had been silenced. Layla watched quietly, her wide eyes reflecting the determination of adults she barely understood but somehow felt connected to. At one point, she tugged on Adam's sleeve. "Will we be okay?" He knelt beside her and smiled gently. "We will be better than okay." That night, back in their apartment, exhaustion settled like a heavy blanket. Adam sat at the kitchen table, sorting through letters and documents. Layla drew quietly nearby, her crayons moving in swirls and lines that spoke of hope and healing. Amir, Adam's estranged brother, entered the room, hesitant but resolute. "I saw the news," he said softly. "You did something brave." Adam looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "I want to help," Amir continued. "I cannot change the past, but I want to be part of the future." The brothers shared a long, uncertain look, a mixture of old wounds and the fragile possibility of forgiveness. Later, as Layla fell asleep, Adam reflected on the journey they were on. Truth had torn their lives apart, but it was also the thread weaving them back together. He thought of his mother's letter, the words she had left like a lighthouse in a storm. Forgiveness was not forgetting, it was choosing to walk forward with eyes open, carrying the past without letting it define the path ahead. In the quiet hours before dawn, Adam made a promise to himself and to Layla, that no matter what storms came, they would face them together, with honesty, courage, and love. Because sometimes, when truth stands tall, even the deepest shadows begin to fade. The bridge between worlds. The dawn painted the city in pale hues of pink and orange, stretching light across cracked sidewalks and towering skyscrapers alike. The gentle hum of the morning rush started to build, a cacophony of footsteps, car horns, and the distant chatter of vendors preparing their stalls. But for Adam and Layla, this morning felt unlike any other. They stood at the edge of the river that cut through the city, a cold, winding ribbon of water reflecting the awakening sky. A new bridge had just been completed, a symbol of connection and hope after years of division and silence. Today, Adam was scheduled to give a speech at its official opening. The bridge was more than concrete and steel. It was a metaphor for their journey, a span between past mistakes and future promises. Layla tugged at Adam's sleeve, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Will the bridge last forever?" Adam smiled, kneeling beside her. "Bridges need care, just like people. If we look after them, they can last a lifetime." She nodded thoughtfully, clutching the small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked along the riverbank. Adam's mind wandered back to the weeks of healing, the legal battles, the conversations with estranged family members, and the quiet moments with Layla that reminded him what truly mattered. The bridge was not just a passage for cars and pedestrians, it was a meeting point for stories, for forgiveness, for new beginnings. At the opening ceremony, the crowd buzzed with anticipation. Local officials, community leaders, and families gathered under fluttering banners and colorful balloons. The sun had risen fully now, casting a warm glow over the faces of those assembled. Adam took the stage, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. But rather than nerves, a calm settled in his chest. He saw Layla waving at him from the front row, her smile a beacon. He began, his voice steady but full of emotion. This bridge stands as a reminder that no matter how wide the gap, no matter how deep the divide, we have the power to connect. To rebuild what was broken. To reach across to each other with courage and kindness. He paused, letting the words sink in. My family's past was filled with silence and shadows. It took years for me to face those shadows, to see the harm caused by secrets and lies. But standing here today, I know that bridges, whether made of steel or trust, are built one step at a time. Applause rippled through the crowd. After the speech, people approached Adam with stories of their own, a woman who had lost her home in the corporate collapse, a young man inspired by Layla's courage, an elderly neighbor who remembered the city's darker days but believed in its bright future. Each conversation felt like a thread weaving a new fabric of community. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Adam and Layla walked along the newly opened bridge hand in hand. The river below whispered its timeless song, carrying away old pain and flowing toward fresh hope. Layla looked up at him, eyes full of wonder. Do you think the bridge will help people who are lost? Adam squeezed her hand gently. It already has. Bridges bring us together. And when we stand together, no one is truly lost. The days following the ceremony were filled with new challenges and small victories. Adam found himself invited to speak at schools and community centers, sharing his story not as a cautionary tale but as a call to action. Layla's drawings began appearing on local walls, colorful murals depicting bridges, hands reaching out, and children playing under the sun. The city was waking up in more ways than one. But healing was never linear. One afternoon, Adam received a call from his estranged mother's lawyer. There was an inheritance dispute, a forgotten piece of land tied to the family's history that threatened to unravel progress once again. The news hit hard, but Adam knew this was part of the process. To build a bridge, one must sometimes face the unstable ground beneath. He shared the news with Layla over dinner. Her face scrunched with concern, but then she nodded firmly. We fix it, Baba. Like we fix everything. Her unwavering faith reminded him of the strength he had discovered not long ago. That night, Adam sat alone on the balcony, the city lights twinkling like stars brought to earth. The gentle breeze carried scents of jasmine, his mother's favorite flower, and stirred memories of lullabies sung long ago. He thought about forgiveness, not as forgetting or excusing, but as a bridge itself, fragile but vital. His phone buzzed with a message from Amir. Meet me tomorrow. We have plans to rebuild. Not just buildings, hearts. Adam smiled, feeling the flicker of hope growing stronger. The next morning, Adam and Amir walked through a neighborhood marked by neglect but pulsing with potential. Together, they met with residents, architects, and social workers determined to turn abandoned lots into community gardens, art spaces, and safe places for children. Layla ran ahead, laughing with other kids who had come to help paint walls and plant seeds. One elderly woman approached Adam, her eyes moist. You and your family have caused pain, she said gently, but you are choosing to heal it. That matters. Adam bowed his head, humbled. That is the only thing I can promise, he replied. To keep building, no matter how long it takes. That evening, as the city settled into quiet, Adam returned home to find Layla asleep on the couch, a sketchbook open on her chest. He flipped through the pages, images of bridges spanning wild rivers, hands reaching out across divides, and small figures walking bravely toward light. He whispered, "You are my bridge, Layla." And she smiled softly in her sleep, as if she already knew. In the midst of broken places, bridges appear, not to erase the past, but to carry us forward, stronger and more connected than before. The moment of reckoning. The city's skyline was a jagged silhouette against the evening sky, painted in hues of violet and gold as the sun sank slowly behind the distant hills. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the streets themselves held their breath. Tonight was not just another night. It was a turning point, a reckoning long awaited by those whose lives had been tangled in the web of lies and pain spun by a legacy too heavy to bear. Adam stood near the entrance of the grand hall where the final hearing would take place. The building, once a symbol of power and privilege, now felt like a theater for truth to unfold. Its marble pillars and polished floors echoed the weight of history and the fragility of justice. Beside him, Layla clutched his hand tightly. Her small fingers intertwined with his, a steady anchor amid the swirling storm of emotions. She had grown so much since the day she shyly offered a wilting dandelion to a stranger, an act that set in motion a chain of events neither could have imagined. Adam's heart pounded, not with fear, but with resolve. The past months had been a relentless climb through darkness and doubt, but he had reached a summit where light finally filtered through. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Reporters jostled for position, capturing every detail, every glance. The families affected by years of secrecy sat together, a patchwork of hope and hurt. Opposite them, lawyers and corporate representatives prepared their final arguments, each side wielding words like weapons and shields. Adam stepped forward as the judge called the room to order. His voice echoed clearly, steady and unwavering. Today, we face more than legal disputes. We confront the truth of a family, a corporation, and a community. He paused, letting the silence press around him. I stand here not as the heir to a fortune, but as a man seeking accountability. Not for revenge, but for justice. For healing. The room held its breath. As testimonies unfolded, stories emerged, painful recollections of broken promises, families uprooted, dreams deferred. But also moments of courage, kindness, and unexpected solidarity. Layla watched, wide-eyed, absorbing the gravity of the moment. She squeezed Adam's hand and whispered, "We are almost there." Adam nodded, drawing strength from her faith. Outside the courtroom, the city waited. The news had spread like wildfire, conversations sparked in cafes and homes, debates stirred on street corners. People who had once felt powerless now saw a glimpse of change, a chance to rewrite the narrative. Amid the crowd was Amir, Adam's brother, his expression a mix of regret and hope. The wounds between them had not fully healed, but tonight, they were united by a shared vision. Whatever happens, Amir said quietly, this is our family's chance to start over. Adam placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Together. Inside, the judge reviewed the evidence, a mountain of documents, testimonies, and revelations painstakingly gathered. The business partner accused of betrayal sat quietly, no longer the untouchable figure of before. His defenses had crumbled under the weight of truth. The judge's voice finally broke the tension. This court recognizes the harm caused by years of concealment and mismanagement. It orders immediate restitution to those affected and mandates oversight to ensure transparency moving forward. A collective exhale swept through the room. Adam's eyes found Layla's, and for a moment, the world outside the courtroom ceased to exist. There was only the quiet affirmation of justice served, not perfectly, but genuinely. As they emerged into the cool night air, the city lights shimmered like stars come to earth. A gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine and rain, wrapping around them like a promise. Layla looked up at Adam, her voice soft but sure. Did we do it, Baba? He knelt to her level, brushing a stray hair from her face. Yes, Layla. We did. But this is only the beginning. She nodded thoughtfully. Then we keep building. Like the bridge. Adam smiled, pulling her close. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding, not just of fortunes or properties, but of trust, relationships, and hope. Adam and Amir worked side by side, forging new paths where old ones had crumbled. Layla's laughter became a constant melody, echoing through the rooms once heavy with silence. Neighbors painted murals of bridges and hands reaching out, children planted gardens where concrete had cracked. The city, too, healed. One evening, Adam stood by the riverbank, watching Layla chase fireflies beneath the stars. Her eyes sparkled with dreams yet to be told. He whispered to himself a promise once made long ago. No matter what comes, we will face it together. Because truth, love, and courage are bridges that never break. And in that moment, the city breathed with new life, ready to face tomorrow, hand in hand. A bridge is not built in a day, nor a heart healed in a moment. But with every step forward, the impossible becomes possible. The quiet dawn of hope. The night deepened, wrapping the city in a blanket of stars and silence. Yet within that stillness, something profound stirred, an unspoken promise carried on the breeze. It was the quiet dawn of hope, soft but unstoppable. Adam sat alone on the balcony of their modest apartment, the distant hum of the city below a gentle reminder that life moved forward, no matter how heavy the past. In his hands rested Layla's sketchbook, the pages filled with dreams, bridges, and hands reaching across divides. His eyes traced the delicate lines she had drawn, each stroke a testament to resilience and innocence. A tiny figure standing at the edge of a great expanse, looking out toward the light. His heart ached with gratitude and humility. He thought of the journey they had traveled, the shadows that had once threatened to consume them, the battles fought in courtrooms and hearts alike, the fragile threads of forgiveness woven slowly but surely. And through it all, a child's simple act of kindness, a flower offered without expectation, had been the spark that ignited change. Layla's soft breathing came from inside, where dreams and reality mingled. He remembered her first days on the streets, the cold nights, the hunger that haunted her small frame. Now she was a beacon, a living bridge between broken past and hopeful future. Adam whispered a vow, more to himself than anyone else. We will carry this light. We will build every bridge, mend every wound, until no one feels lost or forgotten. He stood, stretching out his hands as if to embrace the entire city. The skyline twinkled, a mosaic of lives intertwined, each person a story, each heart a fragile bridge. Outside, the first rays of dawn began to paint the horizon, softening the edges of the night's darkness. And with that light came the promise of tomorrow. Not perfect. Not without struggle. But filled with hope. Filled with love. Filled with the quiet strength that only those who have faced their deepest fears can know. As the world awakened, Adam turned inside to Layla's peaceful face. He bent down, brushing a gentle kiss on her forehead. Good morning, my little bridge, he murmured. And together, they stepped into the dawn, ready to build a future that no storm could ever break.